Good morning and welcome to the APSCC 2024 webinar series. As part of the series, today's webinar is a fireside chat with Martijn Blanken, the CEO of Neospace Group. Hello, Martijn, how are you?
Hello, Olivier. All well here in Riyadh. Nice and cool and sunny. So what can you wish for?
Beautiful. Good to have you on this chat today. Maybe by way of introduction for our friends in the Asia Pacific satellite community, would you want to give us a bit of a perspective about Neospace Group, the public investment fund of Saudi in the region, in the Middle East? This is well known. Maybe it's a bit less from our friends in Asia Pacific. Can you help us understand a bit what the company is and where it is you're trying to head to?
Sure. Neospace Group is owned by PIF. PIF is the Public Investment Fund, and that's the sovereign wealth fund in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Some of the viewers and listeners may be aware that Saudi Arabia has embarked on a journey to make its economy much less dependent on fossil fuels. It wants to diversify its economy, and in order to do so, it's investing in a range of different sectors. Aerospace and defense is one of those sectors, alongside 12 others. And to that end, they have decided to invest in a national space champion called the Neospace Group. And the idea is to become both a national champion for everything commercial space related, as well as an aspiring global leader. And with the latter, I mean global leader in the eyes of customers, of prospective and existing employees, as well as the shareholder.
Wonderful. Thank you for that introduction. It is clear that there's obviously quite a bit of ambition going forward. In the particular case of your leadership at NSG and your experience, maybe to the people who know you a bit less, you're a bit of a new kid on the block in the satellite communication sector and the space sector as a whole. Do you want to give us a few words about yourself, your experience, your past?
Sure. Yes, indeed. I am a new kid on the satellite block, so to say. I'm what people tend to refer to a telecom boy, right? A telco boy. I have spent most of my career in telecoms and technologies, working in Europe. And originally, I'm from the Netherlands, actually. And then I moved to Australia, spent a lot of time in Asia, lived in Hong Kong for a number of years, went back to Australia, moved into private equity and helped some private equity funds make investments in the telecoms sector, then moved to London to run a fiber company before I landed here in Riyadh in the space sector. I think there are quite a few parallels between space and telecoms. The business model is quite similar. Both industries are quite capital heavy, at least if you're an operator of these assets. A lot of cost or a lot of capital has to go in upfront, and then you try to monetize it over time. But at the same time, there is also a service provider aspect to it. In the satellite space, I see that most of it is still integrated. The large existing established players both serve the wholesale market as well as the government and enterprise customers. A trend that sort of commenced 7, 8, 9 years ago in the telco sector is you see just that these two worlds are starting to be separated. You got the netcos, the people who look at managing the assets, and the servcos, those who provide compelling services to end customers. And I suspect that may happen, at least to some extent, in the satellite industry as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Thank you for that vision that you share with us. And in particular, I know for the APSCC that has been active for many, many years in the region in Asia Pacific, communications and telecom and satellite have been obviously at the forefront of the funding mechanism and the funding base for APSCC. You indicated the ambition for Neospace Group and the PIF to make of Neospace Group a global leader going forward. Before we touch maybe on recent news and short-term activities, would you like to share with us a bit of the mid to long-term strategy plan to bring Neospace Group to that mission of becoming at some point a global player?
Sure. When the board interviewed me to take on this role, and maybe for the avoidance of data to provide clarity, the company was formally launched in May of this year. About a year and a bit prior to that, preparation work has been underway, but it's a very new company. Quite a bit of strategy work was done, and the board decided to focus on 4 separate activities. And these are all activities that are deemed to be, call it, commercially viable. The space economy is quite a big economy with many activities that are quite nascent, new, and therefore maybe not necessarily commercially mature. That's why you often see the national space agencies or commissions or whatever they're called in each respective country still to be active. Think deep space exploration, space logistics, human space travel. These are very exciting markets, space manufacturing, very, very promising markets, but still at the very early stage of the curve. They've tasked the NEO Space Group to be active in the more mature markets. So that is satellite communications, it is geospatial services, it is navigation and IoT, and then finally, they've asked us to set up a venture capital fund with the idea, obviously, to invest in new technology that ultimately can be matured through the other divisions. Space is, by definition, a cross-border activity, unlike terrestrial communications, where you are almost sort of constrained by the borders of a particular country. Space exceeds it, and therefore it's very difficult to be an active player in the space industry and not to have an international view. The Middle East is an important region. It is growing quite substantially. So we expect to have our anchor point here in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia in particular. And even though the Middle East technically is part of Asia, we also expect to find customers outside of the Middle East and going more into that part of the world, both as an operator of satellite assets as well as a provider of services.
Very clear. Thank you. And talking about identifying customers, maybe not only in the Middle East, but also moving into the Asia Pacific. I think you've made the headlines. NEO Space Group has made the headlines recently with new announcements of new contract, new customer, in particular in the in-flight connectivity sector. You've also made the headlines very recently in the last couple of days about an M&A activity, mergers and acquisition, the acquisition of a company. Do you want to walk us through the recent announcements that you've made and in particular as they relate to Asia Pacific, but not only?
Sure, more than happy to. So if we zoom in on the satellite communications side of the business, Saudi Arabia has a satellite, a geostationary satellite called SGS-1 in orbit, and it has been in orbit for quite a while, but for reasons that I won't go into detail here on this podcast, it hasn't been operationalized. We have been tasked to do that and then also to commercialize it. The way to commercialize it, the first way that we have defined is to become active in the in-flight communication services, meaning you provide high bandwidth services to aircrafts, which allow passengers, guests of these aircrafts, if you will, a much better user experience compared to what they are getting today. The idea is to allow them to pretty much give access to every content they would get access to on the ground at a similar experience level. Well, aviation is a market that is under a lot of cost pressure. But providing a way to differentiate yourselves from other competitors is obviously therefore quite important, and in-flight communication services could be one area. So we signed a number of airlines, 6 in total. 2 of them we've gone public. One is Turkish Airlines, the second one is Thai Airways, an example of an Asian customer. There are a few others who are also based in Asia, by the way, but we haven't disclosed yet. And we will provide them a compelling range of in-flight communication services by leveraging that geostationary satellite. But we've also joined a alliance, the alliance with SES. And in that alliance, various satellite operators contribute their capacity so that a global coverage model can be provided. Something that is quite common in the mobile industry. If people have a mobile subscriber to a particular mobile operator and they travel abroad, the mobile services continue to function. That concept wasn't that well known in the satellite industry. So that's the Global Orbit Alliance that has been established, and we are a member of that alliance so that we can provide these global services to our clients. That's on the SATCOM side, and we're leveraging an existing asset. And the idea is obviously to launch more satellite assets over time. In the geospatial world, look, it's very difficult to start from scratch. So we very consciously make a decision to make some very targeted acquisitions. We acquired a company called Tacnia ETS, which we subsequently rebranded to NSG, Neospatial Group Geospatial Services. So that is really focused on providing relevant insights and answers after analyzing vast amounts of geospatial data, both satellite as well as aerial. And early in the week, we announced the acquisition of Up42. It's a German company owned by Airbus, and they have created a very compelling marketplace of geospatial data against satellite and aerial of over 80 providers who have assets in the sky that monitor the Earth that will be provided to that platform. The platform will manage the data, process it to some extent, and then provide it to service providers like Tacnia ETS, or now called Geospatial Services, who then provide the insights and the answers to the customers. But these are just two examples of M&A activities. You will not be surprised if I tell you that we're working on a few more, but I can't talk about them at this stage. Some of them will proceed, some of them will not proceed. That's the whole nature of M&A. But we're trying to be very, very targeted. And we prefer to have a number of highly specialized, smaller acquisitions than going after very big ones. That is not our aim moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarity of your explanations, and congratulations on the recent wins organically, as well as your M&A activity. If I'm not mistaken, if we stay on the geospatial activity for just a few seconds, you were also recently granted a license by the Saudi regulator called Communication, Space and Technology, aka CST, about this particular geospatial services. You were given a license and a particular mandate to serve. I don't know if it's national needs or regional needs or international needs, but you have that ability now to provide geospatial remote sensing imaging services across a geography that you will define, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the regulator in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as you said, is called CST, and their remit, their mandate is a national remit. So they can only regulate what is happening in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And they have issued an RFP early in the year to which a number of parties have responded, and they've decided to award the Neospace Group the sole permit. So it's going to be a monopoly in a way. It's a temporary monopoly because the regulator, and who I think are quite visionary, envision that you need to build scale in a fairly nascent industry before you can expand it. Currently, you see most geospatial satellite operators have a form of a platform that you can use to task the satellite or get access to an archive. But it is a very fragmented market. By making sure that there is an aggregation point, you are far more likely able to create value to the industry, because it's much more easier to navigate. People who are in need of geospatial data can go to one platform, either for archive data or to task a satellite, and get the insights that they need without having to worry about which provider is able to provide what sort of technology. You can all find it on one platform. And the acquisition of Up42 will play an important role in building that platform here. They have existing technologies that is extremely relevant to build that capability. But the platform itself, the marketplace itself, will be available anywhere in the world. But in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, CST can mandate that certainly government-owned entities will have to go through that marketplace in order to get access to the data, because the taxpayers or the state of Saudi Arabia funds those images, so they can mandate that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, so you're putting all these pieces together for geospatial services. As far as Kingdom is concerned, you've received obviously the license, the right to operate and to sell those services. You are acquiring up 42. That gives you or provides you with the tool to deliver that sort of services as you explained it. Shall we expect maybe to see you, Neospace Group, seek similar licenses in other countries to deliver those services now that you have the tool, the know-how that you will implement for Saudi, and maybe in particular in Asia Pacific?
We hope so. We certainly hope so. It obviously depends on the regulatory environment in each country. And I've lived and worked in Asia Pacific for, let's say, 15 years of my career, perhaps even a bit more. And if there's one thing that I have learned is that Asia Pacific is an easy phrase to refer to a large group of countries, but they are very, very diverse. And each country have their own sort of policies and vision and strategies. But if any of these countries decide to go down a path similar to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then we would be front in line to throw our hat in the ring and to demonstrate to the regulators there and the economy and the key stakeholders in that country that we have a capability that is potentially of value to the development of that industry in that country. So that's a long way of saying yes, we would be very interested in pursuing a similar strategy in Asia Pacific.
Great. I think that's a great message to take also for the APSCC going forward. It may be helping or facilitating or promoting the fact that what it is you're developing for the kingdom may be of good use for various countries in the Asia Pacific. If we come back to just the telecom or communication, satellite communication sector in the Asia Pacific, so you have indicated that you have now a partnership with SES, I believe it's called SES Open Orbits, globally for the IFC market. You have just made an acquisition in Europe. You mentioned Up42 is a German or a company based in Germany, at least, or a German-based company. Going forward, you have obviously an ambition organically, as you mentioned, to grow, in particular in the IFC sector across the Asia Pacific region. Shall we expect maybe to see you active on selected opportunities, M&A opportunities, maybe in Asia Pacific going forward as well?
Yeah, again, the short answer is yes. There are a number of active opportunities being actively considered. Apologies for that. And I think, I do it from memory, most of them have activities in Asia Pacific. So yeah, it's because a satellite network, almost by definition, is multinational, regional, and ideally global. You cannot constrain your services to a particular region unless you choose to serve a consumer market, for example. But most companies would tend to rely on satellite communications for part of their overall global communication needs, operating in an international context. So yes, we are looking to expand. The way we look at it, though, is not so much from a regional perspective first. That is more a secondary angle. The first angle is which industry verticals are the ones that we choose to serve. As you mentioned, aviation is one that we've chosen organically with an IFC, in-flight communications offering. It would not be a surprise if I say that oil and gas is an important vertical as well that we're looking at, because here in the region, that is quite an important part of the overall economy. But there are other verticals as well. And these verticals are very active in Asia Pacific. So should some of these acquisitions eventuate, you will see us becoming a lot more active in Asia Pacific.
That's, I'm sure, something all of us are looking forward to seeing you achieve in the region. Maybe like one last question, if I may, one more. As you know, the Asia Pacific region is made of a number of regional communication satellite operators in North Asia and Central Asia, in Southeast Asia, that have been around for a very, very long time. Most of them have been looking at trying to implement some sort of a multi-orbit strategy going forward. They are typically legacy geo satellite operators. You are a new operator. You are capitalizing on an existing Saudi asset that you described, SGS1. Shall we expect to see Neospace Group, PIF, somehow define a role, a play in multi-orbit strategy and maybe in LEO, MEO, in addition to your activities in GEO, And as far as communication and SATCOM is concerned, of course, we understand your play in remote sensing and geospatial in LEO.
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. The way we look at the world is building on my experience in the telco industry, that we have an asset-heavy operator side to the business, and we have an asset-light but service-heavy services side to the business. In the latter category, you win because you provide a better customer experience than your competitor. So it's very much centered around being extremely customer obsessed and making sure that their experience is as flawless as it can be when they facilitate their communication needs. If you're an operator, you need to make sure that you get the highest possible utilization at as fast as possible at the best possible yield. It's a different business model. It's not good or bad, it's just very different. We will support our downstream services play with a mixture of technologies. It is multi-orbit, multi-frequency. Some of these assets we aspire to own ourselves. Some of these assets we will buy capacity on the market. And some of the providers will be the existing Asian satellite operators, Olivier, very likely. But it's very difficult to set an aspiration that you want to become a global leader in this industry and not invest in satellite assets ourselves. So yeah, satellite communication assets, whether it's at the LEO level and whether it's broadband or narrowband, are very much front of mind for us. As you know, these things don't happen overnight. That requires a lot of planning, a lot of discussion, and we are considering a number of avenues at the moment. I think it is too early to be too explicit about it, but I expect in 2025 to provide more clarity, at least on some of our plans.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the insights, Martijn. It goes without saying that on behalf of the Asia Pacific Space Communication Council, we wish you, Neospace Group, and you personally every success going forward. And maybe we could definitely agree to meet again mid-2025, monitor progress of Neospace Group, and I'm sure you'll have a lot of new activity to share with us and news. And again, thank you for your time. Have a great afternoon in Riyadh, and we'll catch up soon, hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.